let's get to the news. All right. Hey, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. Let's get into the news, shall we? So this week, the Democrats passed what I mentioned last week, which is the Inflation Reduction Act. And what's really interesting about this story is that the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, he basically was doing like a press conference afterwards, and someone asked him, hey, there's actually a letter that says 230 economists or economic experts, they're saying that this is actually going to increase inflation. So, like, what do you say about that? And plus, this Penn Ward model says it too. And he's like, they're wrong, just straight up. They're wrong. I don't know who those people are. STFU basically. So I just find it interesting that not too long ago, the left was saying stuff about trust the experts. The adults are in charge. CDC says this, WHO says that, right? NIH says this, Dr. Fauci. Because of this consensus of experts and people who would know, you should therefore do X, right? And they can use that authority to beat you into submission with whatever their agenda is, right? And not too long ago, right, the Hunter Biden laptop situation, there was 50 intelligence officials who came out and said, this looks like Russian propaganda, right? And the Dems use that to say, well, if the experts have a consensus about it, look, trust the experts, right? Believe the experts, right? And now that they are in power and running the show, whenever the experts are against them, as they are in this case, experts be damned. So really interesting. I'm reminded of a quote that Jack Posobiec said, which is that it's not hypocrisy, it's actually hierarchy, right? In their mind, they are not, applying a double standard. They're just saying that they're better than you. Right? They know better than you. That they know better than 230 economists or, a Penn Wharton model or the stupid reporters and all you stupid plebs who, just need to fall in line and do what you're told. So that's an interesting one. Ultimately, I think this goes into the A category. It's good to see the experts, quote unquote, on our side this time around. Usually, the majority, 230 or whatever the case might be, is going to be more of an op, kind of a psyop to push you out and to get you to going along with the majority opinion plus the authorities. But in this case, it's kind of shaken out here, and it's kind of part of the course in terms of where we are right now. Okay, next up, Alex Jones. Alex Jones, the controversial internet personality, I guess media conglomerate personality kind of person. A lot of persons there. He was actually fined this week by the victims of the Sandy Hook tragedy, and he needs to pay like $45 million in punitive damages, or I guess it's $49 million, split between 45 and then 4. Yeah, that's what's going on. So pretty crazy story, mainly because the entire trial was just kind of a shit show, honestly. So you have some rainbow hair colored, judge, telling everybody to get the jab and wear your mask and all this. Obviously super kind of hyper political, hardcore Democrat and lefty. You got, the freaking lawyer of Alex Jones, leaking or handing over his text messages to the counterparty before the trial had even begun. Just an absolute mess. The entire line of questioning. I guess the attorney on the offensive side was basically like, hey, we need to not only, reconstitute the Sandy Hook victims for the amount of money that Alex Jones may have made on their name for what he did, but we also need to destroy Alex Jones's company and we need to make sure that he can never build it back up again. So purely just malicious. How can we hurt this person to the greatest extent possible, and how can we sabotage and set up a situation where he has no chance of ever winning? So pretty dastardly stuff. There's a sick video here when he calls out Epstein and the Clintons, which is like really, really sick. I won't play that here, but you can check this out on InfoWars. And this one I'm going to give just a regular A. This is all business as usual at this point, right? It's important stuff, but it's business as usual because they've been using this whole like past year and a half, ever since January 6th, to go after, and ever since Trump left office, to go after his political allies, right? You don't have to be or have been at the Capitol. You can be just part of the left in general. Now that they are in the driver's seat, they're going to wield their power and their authority to the maximum effect. And this is just a continuation of that, with these show trials and et cetera, et cetera. Donald Trump grabbed the wheel of the Secret Service and all this stuff, just making up things, right? So, they have power and they're not afraid to use it. So it is what it is. Doesn't fundamentally shift the narrative that much in terms of how we understand it. I will say, for someone like, as big as Alex Jones, he has at least 1 million followers, across the country and the world. It would be very easy for, those folks to, contribute on average $50 a piece. And now he's at $50 million. He's able to walk away without any pain or punishment. The issue is he can't do that on a platform like GoFundMe because they're going to revoke that or ban him. He's already banned, I guess. And then if they do that on Give Send Go, the Christian fundraising website, they may hack it just like they did with the truckers earlier this year. So this whole need for like a parallel economy is definitely something that is extremely real. Next up, so we got to talk a little bit about these what I've been thinking and calling like crimes of desperation and despair. You have people basically throwing their lives away over like absolutely nothing, right? So there was this Las Vegas vape store owner. I'm sure most of y'all have probably seen this now. He basically defends himself by going Mortal Kombat on these robbers who come in super unprofessional, by the way. I mean, they look like stoners, very slow. Like if you're going to come in with a ski mask, you better be efficient. You better be quick to the draw and saying, give me all your money. These guys just kind of waltz in there, la da 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 la da da do. And then this guy right here on the right, he basically just like steals the tips jar and then walks away, and then this guy on the left decides he wants to grab some vape pens or whatever the case might be. And he gets literally Mortal Kombated by this vape store owner. It was the craziest thing. Johnny Wynn. It's crazy. Yeah, I'm not gonna play it. It's YouTube stuff, but his final words. I think this guy died. I saw a couple of reports to that effect. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he looks like he might have died. But what he says is like, inward, he stabbed me. I'm dead. And then he slumps to the ground. So it's like a 7-hit minimum combo with one literally ending on the kind of the back of the neck. Very, very brutal stuff. Very brutal stuff. This is a crazy story. I think this kind of woke people up, but I kind of put it in the same category of some of the like crimes of despair that we've been seeing recently, right? You have the California liquor store owner, shout out to ABL for the story, who basically, shot at and almost blew a guy's like arm off, who was trying to rob him. Not too kind of long ago, you had this guy, Jose Alba, right? Who, basically, fought for his life over, get this, a bag of chips. It was literally a bag of chips. These are crimes of, desperation and despair. People not valuing their lives at all, and deciding to just randomly and oftentimes just unprovoked, just commit acts of violence. The world is really kind of falling apart, it seems, in terms of the American culture. And why I think this is important is there's an interesting kind of observation right now that's happening, or movement that's happening, which is that people are slowly waking up to this like Soros backed kind of political power establishment in the country. So there's this pretty sick report from, what is this, Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund, that basically came out with a report not too long ago, like highlighting that according to their study, there are 75 George Soros-backed prosecutors that are overseeing half of America's 50 most populous cities. So that's quite a bit, right? Enough from city representation to represent 1 in 5 Americans as a whole, right? So without knowing it, one of the chief law enforcement officers of 1/5 of Americans, you might say, is George Soros, a Hungarian American billionaire who lurks in the shadows, pulling the strings like some kind of puppet government. Really interesting stuff. I definitely would encourage folks to read this kind of full article by this law enforcement fund or kind of agency here. Some key stats just kind of in the executive summary that I thought were interesting is, so I mentioned 75 prosecutors representing about 75 or 72 million people. But what shocked me about this is that Soros apparently only spent like roughly 40-ish million on direct campaign spending over the past decade. So I must say, like, this is less than Alex Jones's fees and fines coming out of this trial, right? 40 million for a guy worth $8.5 billion or whatever is nothing. I mean, that's nothing. I mean, there are people who spend that much on a single house. So to be able to influence and kind of rule over the safety of 20% of Americans from afar is really astonishing. And you see here this kind of map here of the who those 75 or what cities those 75 DAs kind of reign from. Everywhere from California, the South, the East Coast, and parts of the kind of the middle of the country and West as well. So really, really interesting stuff. I only wish that the organization had printed the full list. I don't really see it here. It would have been simple to have a couple of pages in the appendix, but shame on them for not doing that. But still good research nonetheless. And ultimately, I think I already mentioned the whole situation with Jose Alba. So fun fact, Alvin Bragg is one of those George Soros-backed DAs. So here's the connection, right? Here's how it all fits together. Over here in New York, right, in Manhattan, you have, one of these, George Soros operatives pulling the strings. And it was only after significant pressure that he actually dropped the murder charge. And I tell you, like, my gut is telling me if Jose Alba had been, let's say, Jack Anderson, some white Caucasian, male, I think that things would have turned out differently. The charges probably would have stuck, right? Yeah, but you have a white male, ending or taking the life of a black male. Like, even with the pressure, I think the charges would have stuck, right? But he's Jose Alba. I think he's an immigrant. He's actually going back, I think, to his home now, Dominican Republic, I believe it is, because the U.S. justice system is falling apart, and it's not safe for him here. And maybe this DA will change his mind at some point, right? So pretty crazy. Last thing before we kind of put a button on this particular story, just kind of unpacking the violence is there's a really interesting thread here from Michael Malice. And he says, in response to Randy Weingarten, let me start with Randy Weingarten, actually. So Randy Weingarten, and then she in turn is responding to Marco Rubio. So maybe I should start there. So Marco Rubio, he's seeing all this George Soros backed violence, the Alvin and these major cities, Los Angeles, etc. And he's like, hey, we should do something about this. We should force these Soros backed prosecutors to actually put criminals in jail. And Randy Weingarten, she's like, hey, this is basically anti-Semitism, right? Soros is a Hungarian Jew who survived the Holocaust, right? And this is a smear to Jews, basically, is her argument here, right? Which is a red herring, right? And then Michael Malice, he's great. He's on the opposite side. He's Jewish as well, but he's like, look, my parents sent me to yeshiva, which is like the Jewish school where they learn the Talmud. As an immigrant kid, because they knew to avoid government schools. I hate Soros, I hate you, and what you do to children. So what the left does, and this is for me just like a really interesting observation, is they live on the axis of victimhood, right? So I already mentioned the whole thing is, if that person, Jose Alba, was a white male, his fate would have probably been very different. He would have been in like a Kyle Rittenhouse situation, trying to fight for his life in a courtroom, right? It's very similar kind of paradigm in this case, right? How do you defend George Soros? Well, you say that he's a Jew that survived the Holocaust. Therefore, he's untouchable. Therefore, he's a victim. And that victimhood gives him power, right? So therefore, his power can be used to justify his behavior. And if you criticize him, you're doing it because of his victimhood status. You are an anti-Semite. To totally distract, right, and derail your core argument, which is that he's empowering violent criminals to roam the streets and without any responsibility, before the law. So congrats to Michael Malice for calling that out, and kind of seeing through the op that Randy Weingarten here and is kind of putting on, and she has all the stuff you would imagine, Ukraine flag, and I think she works for like a teacher's lobby or union. So she's deep into the Dem kind of establishment here. Okay, so ultimately, I hate to say it because that was kind of a long kind of storyline here, but I think this also goes in the A category. We've been seeing this happen kind of all year, and even though it's particularly brutal, it's not a change in what has already been happening. It's just particularly, graphic and nasty to look at, right? This kid was like 17 years old who got his life taken over a freaking vape pen, for Christ's sake. I mean, it's just insane what these people are doing, throwing their lives away. But it is a continuation, unfortunately, of what we've been seeing these past couple of years. Random acts of violence through spiritual darkness. On a brighter note, we got to talk about Ron DeSantis. And this actually kind of ties in this whole theme of Soros-backed prosecutors and attorneys. So Ron DeSantis, over this past week, he basically fired not his DA, but one of the, state A's or state attorneys. Basically, hey, Warren refused to prosecute charges related to abortion and what they call gender affirming care for minors, and which is not really gender affirming, but okay. So he basically DeSantis basically fired this guy. And one of the things I thought was interesting is like in that firing, he basically calls this attorney a Soros-backed guy. And I was like, wow, that's kind of interesting. What's going on there? And that's when I began to realize, like, okay, first of all, let's look into who this Warren fellow is, Andrew Warren. He kind of came out of nowhere in 2016 and kind of like upset his opponent. So he unseated Mark Ober, who was a Republican incumbent, and he exonerated a guy who was apparently wrongfully convicted. The conservatives don't like him, but the kicker is down here at the bottom, which is rumors of support for Warren from financiers such as George Soros date back to 2016. According to a profile of Warren, the Times published in 2020, Soros likely did help Warren's campaign. We understand, quote, we understand that he gave money to the state Democratic Party, he being George Soros, Warren said then. So there you go. He acknowledged that, like even Warren from his own mouth said, yes, Soros gave money to the Democrats in Florida to help them with their races. I was a Democrat in Florida running a race. Basically, some of that money went to me, in so many words. But continuing, and the state party money went to support different candidates. I have very little insight into the amount of money he gave and who it went to, etc. So he's basically saying, yes, I got the money. But, you know, who exactly it went to and how much, we're not really sure. So he is Soros backed. I mean, he's not denying it, right? So very, very interesting call out. This guy George Soros has been at it for years, right? A decade ish, in terms of pushing his agenda. White people, black people, brown people, all shades and stripes, as long as their ideology is basically, let injustice ring, let criminals roam the streets without any accountability at all. As long as that's the ideology, it's okay. And I have to give some credit to Ron. He's been kind of on a roll, Ron DeSantis. He this past week refused to appear on The View, which I think was a good play. I think it was a solid decision. One of the things that I didn't like about Trump is that even though he was a great governor, or he had good governance, I should say, he oftentimes just like walked right into the lion's den, right? With like basically assholes who just wanted to destroy his life and ruin his credibility. He knew it wouldn't be a fair interview. It was really just an opportunity to get a couple sound bites to make him look bad, right? So you can continue the negative press. But he would continuously, time after time, give these people the time of day. And Ron is not that way. He's a man of action. So the big distinction that I'm saying between Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump is, Ron is a man of action. He's going to have limited words on a topic. Once he's said his words, he shuts up and he takes action, which is amazing. And Donald Trump was largely the exact opposite. He'll speak forever. He'll complain forever. He'll go on Twitter, or when he was on Twitter, and just like give out all this, these diatribes and frustrations. But he rarely actually took action because he was, I think, for a variety of reasons. But one is because he was being held hostage by the media, and he knew that every single thing he did, they would blow it up, and make it into 10 times as what it was, to destroy his reputation. So I really, really respect Ron, who doesn't walk into traps. He doesn't seem quite as easily fooled. And like the Democrats, he's not afraid to use power, right? And so you see him taking aim here. There's a Bloomberg article at woke CEOs. He's taking aim and criticizing ESG investing and these various woke companies, including PayPal. And just coming hard into them. I mean, just justify your existence, right? What's going on here? What's up with this hypocrisy in terms of asking for ESG, but at the same time not living up to that standard in your private jets and so on and so forth. One of the interesting things that's been really in sight for the right side these past couple of months has been ESG being a scam. So like James Lindsay. Rest in peace, James Lindsay. He's no longer alive on Twitter, at least. He's been really going in on ESG as well. And the results show, right? So Ron DeSantis, not too long ago, he got PayPal to, after his kind of coming at them verbally, he got them to unfreeze this group called Moms for Liberty. So they were trying to collect donations through their site. Donors would give monthly and automatically through PayPal, and PayPal just decided to basically hoe them, and keep their money. So they had like $4,500 that belonged to them, and PayPal froze them those funds and didn't allow them to come through anymore. My understanding is this was due to their affiliation with Ron DeSantis, and kind of the right overall. And so when Ron kind of took that to task, within a very short period of time, those funds were unfrozen. So very nice coincidence. But the man's been on a roll. I'm gonna move this up to S class. I think he is a legend. And again, he's a man of action, and that's what we're going to need for this 2024 situation. Don't get me wrong; I'll be happy if Trump runs and wins in 2024. I would be happy with that. But I think Ron DeSantis would make a better governor. I don't think he's going to be as popular as Trump, given the name recognition issues. But smart people have their money on DeSantis, even if he doesn't run in 2024. If he again stays alive, and hey, we're at war, anything can happen. I think he would be post 2024, kind of the flag bearer of the right. And then last thing, I would be remiss not to mention Kari Lake. So she ran and won her primary for governor in Arizona, and this was part of a broader trend over the past week or so of a lot of GOP candidates who were Trump backed. I think all of them actually winning their races here. So this is a nice slap in the face, particularly to Mike Pence, who endorsed the other GOP candidate who lost, therefore, to Kari Lake by 2.5 percentage points. But it's a good sign in the culture war. She is probably hated. I would say she's hated more than Ron DeSantis. Like after Trump right now, she might be the most hated person on the right. And that's including Steve Bannon. That's including, Alex Jones, if he really is even on the right. Like this may be enemy number 2 for the Dems. So seeing her at least make this first hurdle was pretty sweet, and hopefully she'll be able to crush her Democratic opponent as well, because her fire is just insane, and she carries that America First energy full fledged. So I'm gonna give this one an A though. I think we kind of expected that she would win. It just took a while for the state to count the votes, and it wasn't by a landslide, right? It was 2.5 percentage. It was a win. It was a solid win. But it wasn't nearly like her Democratic opponent, I think, won by like 20 points or something like that, right? So, all right, that's it for today. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening to today's rundown. If you liked what you heard, please comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.